Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, something I find quite interesting is that a lot of disbelievers, kafirs, will mock Islamic female modesty. But then they turn around and complain how their husbands cheat, how their husbands can't stop watching adult content, how free mixing between the genders is fine, but then when he cheats with the nanny or cheats with a friend or a coworker, suddenly they're left in wonder and why. And so it also tied into my thought process on concerning where I'm going at in this video. Women will neglect their husbands, right? They will make every reason not to have intimacy. Look for any reason to kill their libido, right? And then when the husband snaps and he cheats, or he watches adult content, or he has a mistress, or he visits a brothel, or he pays for OnlyFans, all the blame is put on him. And then I realized some of these women, they only want monogamy so that they can really just be a domineering force to the man. So they want to control him to such a degree that even when he's suffering without intimacy, they still can keep him collared. And I found this quite odd. And some women will say, look but don't touch. You know, you shouldn't tell a woman how to dress. It's all up to the men. And then I thought about how in Islam we're told, no. Don't look, lower your gaze. So Islam, we're told as men and women, lower our gaze, right? When you look upon something for too long, you start to covet it, like wealth and things like that, status. And then when it comes to the beauty of women, there's no denying that there's an aspect of, hey man, this woman is literally walking down in Oakland dressed in the most lewd manner. I'm lusting. And then they see some of the hookers on the street corners, which Oakland has decriminalized loitering for sex work, due to the liberal policies, and then they cheat, bring home an STD to their wife being the type of woman to always mock modesty, always make an excuse for bare shoulders or for swimsuits and yoga pants, you name it, and then they wonder, how did this happen? That's just something I find so fascinating, is that women will say, how did this happen? And then they always blame men for looking at women who dress lewd. And then these women who wear basically underwear to work out in, they get mad when men look, but they know they dress that way for men, and they choose to go to a mixed gym instead of an all-female gym. And then when they're home, they don't dress like that for themselves, but when they go out and they know men will see them, they dress that way. And so, women will complain about adultery, but then they'll mock modest dress codes. So it's so baffling. Utterly baffling. And that's why I think the wisdom of polygamy is that a woman cannot abuse a man, and when she realizes that the man has other outlets, some women recline more into their feminine nature because they're actually calmer knowing that they don't have a scratch post. I just really started analyzing the wicked side of some female behavior. And when you look at women who demand monogamy and they hate polygamy, but then they also make reels on Instagram and TikTok and posts on Twitter/X about why they didn't want to sleep with their husbands and how, he has to do this and do that in order for me to get in the mood. And it's all up to the man, and, she just gets to sit back and expect him to dance like a little puppet and bend the knee to everything she desires. And that she doesn't have to take an active role. And then those types screech at a hadith about, the cursing angels and even if you're occupied with the oven and your husband beckons you to fulfill his desires, that you should go. oh, that's misogyny, that's oppression, that's abuse, you know, blah, 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 blah. Now, I've been clear in the past, very firmly clear, about when a woman can say no for valid reasons. And personally, you know, after you have a baby, the roller coaster of your hormones is intense, and it takes a lot of work to get over that. And I also did a video about birth trauma in my live streams. You want your woman to have a peaceful labor and delivery, because the PTSD from that can prevent her from bouncing back. And how I've also talked about how women can get through postpartum depression, which is something that occurs to a lot of women, which kills the libido and hurts their marriage, and it's a very tough time for couples and whatnot. Even with every kid, you could have, it could be your fourth kid, and all of a sudden the fourth one is, bam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests you. So I've spoken about this on my blog. I've done all kinds of stuff concerning it. But that's when I think that you have to have a grace. Like, a husband has to be patient. But I never said it was easy for the man. But that it's a time in your life where you have to be patient. Just like when men go through a dry period of money, a woman has to be patient, right? Before, maybe you used to get to go out and eat, and, you know, he's not making enough tips, or his hours were cut. He's not getting enough jobs, like side jobs, or, you know, like if you're a landscaper or you're a roofer or a plumber, there just hasn't been enough jobs recently, and things slow down, you ain't gonna get your money, so you have to be patient through the dry periods, right? So women have to be patient with finance, and men have to be patient, I'd argue, where there's the postpartum period of having the baby. And when you're a nursing mom, it's a little bit difficult because the baby has to feed every 3 hours and on demand, and they cluster feed, so it's a little harder, right? And then you have to do your ghusl in the shower, and it's stressful, okay? And then making sure you have done your ghusl by the time for prayer and whatnot, it's a hard thing to do, okay? So I understand the frustration, but we're dealing with disbelievers in this circumstance. So the fascinating thing again is that liberals, they'll be like, yeah, you should allow Cardi B, Sexy Red, Jennifer Lopez, you know, Taylor Swift's out there flaunting her camel toe to the crowds. They push sensuality to men in statuaries, you know, in art, in music, in movies. It's everywhere. And other women are gladly tempting other women's husbands. But then all the blame is put on the men. Well, you shouldn't have looked. And then if he doesn't look, he's considered a weirdo and a freak. And then he's told, okay, you can look, but don't touch. I want you to think about how twisted that is. If you think even, let's do a funny example. In my mind, it's funny. Aladdin in the Disney film, right? He's going into the cave. Abu, the little monkey, he sees a giant red ruby, and he's staring at it. And the rules of the cave are you can't touch anything, otherwise it caves in, right? And he's like, he's trying to get it, and then he's like, Abu, no! And then he can't help but he touches the sparkling ruby, and then the carpet has to, you know, try to get them out, and you know the show, right? You know the movie. But that's a funny example of, well, how long can you stare for? And then you see the brilliance of Islam, which says, coat the allure, cover, conceal. You know, stop trying to be clothed but naked in public, right? But again, as I have mentioned, a lot of women know they can say, I love my husband, but they get beautified and adorned because they're hoping that the right guy sees them. They don't want to be chaperoned because they want to dress real nice, and if that their husband's at work, but if she's at the grocery store or at Whole Foods and a certain wealthier, better looking man approaches her and she's able to get his number on the down low, you know, she's hoping she can monkey branch out of that next relationship. A lot of women pretend this is not the case, but from woman to woman, the secrets of the Book of Woman, we know this is what is occurring. So they get very threatened by the Muslim woman who has clearly taken away her advantage, because revealing your body is an advantage. Okay? So, when more women are covered, men are less likely to be tempted with adultery, and women are not as stimulated to tempt married men. And women love sleeping with married men. They've done tons of studies where if a man has a wedding ring, he actually gets hit on more than when he doesn't have one. And some women get a thrill of being the mistress. So Islam tells men, no. Marry them, bring them out of the shadows, have an honorary religious marriage, and have responsibilities and accountabilities to her as a wife. Right? That's proper, but they will rage against that. Guys, that's horrible. How could you? How could you, as a Muslim woman, cover your beauty and allow him to have another wife? How could you do that? You know, and you cook and clean for him still when he visits you? Oh, you're oppressed. And you stay home and have his kids? You're oppressed. But think about how backwards they are. They'll deny their husbands intimacy, force him into monogamy. If he cheats because he can't take it anymore, they get to drag him through court and take half his stuff. It's fascinating. So the men, for the kafir men, are at a huge disadvantage because their women have no spiritual obligation to have intimacy with them. And those women, they want to flaunt their assets. And then if you tell them you should be more modest, they get very angry. And then when they catch their husband liking a bikini pic on Instagram, oh, how dare you do that, how could you? They look and sneak in his phone, see what he watches, adult content. How could you? He's sexting other women. How could you? Hold up. You're denying him. You are pushing him into this sin. You have these super high standards. You're not taking an active part in stimulating your own self to be enthusiastically enthralled in intimacy. And you expect him to be loyal to you, to pay for things, to come home to you every night, to not look at anyone else, to not desire anyone else. Okay? But you tell women to dress in the most sexiest manner. And you expect him to be like a little chihuahua, sit down and wait for his little bone. And that you get to dress provocative and sexual for other men, but you're dry to your husband. This is another thing. These women will be in their pajamas at home, not trying to look fresh for their husbands, denying him intimacy. When they go out, they're adorned for other men to look at them, hoping another man approaches them. But when they go home, that all comes off, and oh, there's their husband. You know, there he is again. And then they catch him, you know, trying to get validation since he doesn't get it from his wife, and now he's the evil guy. He destroyed our marriage. And then they, you know, the kids have to suffer being in a fatherless home, and it all spirals. And so Islam is superior because it doesn't let women to be cruel to men in terms of intimacy. Now, feminists will say, oh, financial abuse this, and financial abuse that, emotional abuse this, emotional abuse that. But when men start to open up and say, you know, intimacy is actually a very deep part of our relationship, and without it, you know, I'm not going to have a strong bond to you, I'm not really going to be able to last very long. And those women will say, like, no. If I gain weight, if I am bitchy and catty, and I don't cook for you, and I expect you to pay all this stuff, you know, you just got to take it. And that's it. Meanwhile, those same women will watch, like, shows where there's tons of hedonism. And if a Muslim comes up and says, like, hey, you know, we shouldn't have shows that have so much nudity and provocative nature stuff, they'll be like, how dare you? And it's like, okay. So I actually feel bad for the men. Because the men, they're surrounded. So if men have a difficult time controlling their one-eyed friend, that's why when you look at Prophet Yusuf, may Allah be pleased with him, and how he was able to resist, that is like, whoa, big deal. One of my favorite lessons in Islam is concerning Prophet Yusuf, Joseph. He resisted, a beautiful, powerful woman, and he's feared Allah more. So, that shows you that a disciplined man can resist that. And so, when we see women who go out of their way to keep men enthralled, keep them in a constant state of stimulation, and then they complain when those men approach them or try to talk to them, you see, you can't win with these women. So, they don't want to dress more modest, and they want to be able to fish for a new guy. And when other women who are more pretty to them tempt their husbands, the sisterhood evaporates and now the man is bad, not the woman. But if he decides, hey, I want to have a second wife, oh no, he's bad now, he doesn't appreciate me, he doesn't know my worth, and it's like, okay. Men can get a woman pregnant even into their 80s. Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, two prime examples. Whereas women, we can't really do that, which shows you why there's a rise in surrogacy, which is evil, and IVF, right? So, men in marriage, they're supposed to keep their women around, even if she's really losing her beauty, which we all will, regardless of the Botox, even if you try to look like Joanne Rivers, going under the knife every year, getting a Michael Jackson nose, doesn't matter, you're still going to age. And George Clooney has aged like fine wine. These men do age differently, okay? This is just a fact. You look at Pamela Anderson now, if you just take Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, just some famous male celebrities, Will Smith, guy that doesn't age, and you just see the trajectory, we can be honest and say women age differently. So, as a man's wife ages, and if she's aging and he's forced into monogamy, and imagine where Sharia law was applied, where you'd be stoned for adultery, and she's neglecting his needs, he's gonna suffer greatly. Think about that. Men are supposed to be, and women, are supposed to be punished for adultery and fornication. If that was something that happened, people would see the seriousness of neglecting your partner. Now, I try to avoid these conversations because I don't consider it my wheelhouse exactly. And I do think there's a lot of infiltrators who, they just want to frame Muslim women and religious women as prudes. But where I'm coming from is divorced feminists who try to misguide religious women, and lesbian feminists who try to attack heterosexual marriages, okay, and so on and so forth. And liberal women, they will shame so many aspects of Islam, but then they'll see women dressing like for the nightclubs, and then they really do expect men to be like superheroes. Don't look, don't talk, look but don't touch. It's like, of course men should always have self-control. What I mean by the don't touch is like adultery, is what I'm saying. So, your husband's in a bar, you let him go out because, you're both into free mixing. He goes out with the guys, and then there's a girl at the bar. They're talking, he's looking, no touching's happened, but before you know it, wham bam, thank you ma'am, and he's cheated on you. Remember the show Jersey Shore, and how Ronnie was his name? He was with Sammy. This is a throwback. And he cheated on her in the club. And you're like, okay, you guys are clubbers. Alcohol and women amongst men, sorry, you're not gonna get a loyal guy out of that. Just is impossible. Just is not possible. Super difficult, right? So women will allow their men to go out partying and expect him not to cheat. They will make excuses to smoke weed and use intoxicants and then expect their husband not to cheat. Islam tells you don't use intoxicants. They mock that. They mock sobriety. But if you mix in alcohol and free mixing, you're literally going to get a recipe for disaster. When a woman dresses in a very sexual manner and she's free mixing with men and there's intoxicants in the air, the sexual energy is going to bloom and it's going to have the usual outcomes. And so women will be like, how did my relationship fall? How did he cheat? Why is my family ruined? They become very nihilistic and cynical about men, when in reality, if they just accepted the Islamic standard for female dress codes and no free mixing, and really adopted the sober living lifestyle of Islam, so many of their problems would be gone. Subhanallah. Because I was often told as a young girl, as a young teen, oh, it's okay if your man looks, don't get jealous, but if he touches, then that's a problem. But are we gonna sit here and pretend that eye contact doesn't play a role in flirtation? That eye contact isn't a tool of seduction for women? That you can't speak with the eyes? They used to say the eyes are the windows to the soul. There's so much you could look at. And so, it's fascinating that the women who say that Islamic clothing is oppressive are the same ones who will get angry that their husbands are gawking at uncovered women. And then when you tell those women to cover, they say, don't judge her. So they protect the women who tempt their men. Do you see that? They protect the women who are going to tempt their men, and then they attack the women who are not trying to tempt their men. Muslim woman, she's doing her thing, you know, she's covered, you know, I gotta go get some grocery stores, you know, and whatever, you can do my thing with my children. We're invisible, you know, men don't pay too much attention to the covered one. Oh, she's a fanatic, she's an extremist. But if a woman's got everything hanging out, you know, she's in downtown Miami, she's got it all loose. Okay. And you're walking with your husband or your boyfriend. Who's trying to tempt who? In reality, the woman is dressed that way to be sexual, to get the look. Oh, I'm not doing it for no one but myself. You don't dress like that inside your apartment. You got adorned to go out to impress. Let's not play games here. Let's not play semantics here. We know the truth of female nature. It's not a secret. Okay? She wants the attention, and the attention means the gaze. Means to look. To garner focuses of others. To snatch the focus. To enthrall the focus. To use yourself as bait in order to have a male that you approve of come to you and whatever you're going to do. And so, you can't, let's tie it all in. You cannot neglect your husband. Make all the excuses not to give him 10 minutes of your time, 15 minutes of your time. Okay? And you actually get, it feels good. And you're going to ignore his needs. And then you make excuses for women to dress lewd. You're mocking the Muslim women online. And then your husband goes out. He sees the ladies of the night in his community. And she's like flaunting it all. And he's like, oh man, my wife has neglected me. Whew, this is hard. You know, he's driving. Then he goes to work. One of his co-workers got low tops flirting with him. He's like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then he's just scrolling some political news. And then some OF ad comes up on him. He's like, oh no. And he's like, what do I do? And then he goes home. He's stimulated by all the stuff he's seen around him. Because men are in a constant state of arousal now. Because of all the nudity. And then you tell him no. And then he, you know, day after day after day, something happens and you're shocked. You're like, how could this have happened? But women destroy their own marriages by trying to pretend that they don't have to take an active role in their own mental health. It's always, I'm sad, I don't feel confident, I have a low self-esteem, you know, I'm not going to look for solutions, I'm going to make up a standard and then make my husband jump through those loops. And he's my puppet and he has to do this, this, and that, and I have no control over my own brain and my own hormones and my own body, and he's got to do all this. And there's a woman who he can pay $100 who will be like, honey, I got you for those 15 minutes. Really analyze this. And so women will also talk about like not giving intimacy as a form of abuse, as a form of control. We all know this. To rectify his behavior. It can be needed in some times, like if he's done something egregious and you're like, you know what, I'm mad at you, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna go sit in the backyard and have a cup of coffee and I don't want to talk to you. Like, giving the cold shoulder can work sometimes in order until you can reconcile. But that's a little different than a woman being like, no, you know, I'm gonna be petty. He doesn't meet every single mark that I have made up in my mind that I got from social media. So now I'm gonna deny him intimacy, and you think that's not gonna backfire. See, that just means we have a flawed perception of what men actually need. You know, and then if he starts not going to her, her self-esteem that she thought was so high, she thought she was the bee's knees, goes right down. And the funniest part is, it's not funny, but it is funny, but it's sad, may Allah protect us. If she found out that he had a mistress who was more attractive than her, and she was giving it to him left, right, and center, her self-esteem would be imploded because she thought in her head she had this power. And then when let's say she decides, oh, you cheated on me, I'm gonna divorce, right? So instead of fixing the marriage and everything, she divorces. Now she's like in her 30s, she's got kids, and she sees that she's not as desirable as she thought she was, right? Because now more than ever, you see men not wanting to go with older single moms. You see that. They're going for unmarried younger women who have no children. And that they usually just use and recycle women who have children. Or they use them and harm their children. And so we're seeing like, okay, she thought she was going to have it all. I'm going to divorce and I'm going to go get a rich guy and he's going to be my puppet. Puppet 2.0. But she continues with the same bad habits, it's not going to work. Because if you're a single mom and then you get remarried and you're going to play the starvation game while he's helping your kids to survive, putting a roof over your kids' heads who are not even biologically his, and maybe he hasn't even had a new child with you, and you're going to play the dry game and not fulfill his needs, and then you think that he's not going to cheat or turn to adult content or end up divorce you, so you'll be a second, third, fourth divorcee with your kids. Look at your life. Okay? There's so much here. So I've just been thinking about it a lot. And so polygamy in Islam allows women to be like, hey, keep your wickedness in check. Keep your shenanigans in check. Okay? Because if you imagine being stoned for adultery, flogged for fornication, then you would take your marriage vows more serious. And if you follow the hadiths about answering your husband's requests and how important it is, you'd be like, oh, okay. And then if you saw how there's also the process of men can neglect you in the bed in order to rectify behavior that they don't like, there's a process, right, if you recall, and then your desires is flaming and burning, you want him, you're attracted to him, and then he's telling you no, 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 your self-esteem is getting lowered. You're starting to go a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because you're like, I want him and my seduction isn't working on him and he's being stronger than my seduction. What do? You can't just go cheat because there's going to be that punishment for you. Then you'd actually feel the suffering that he is suffering. See, that's the brilliance of Islam as well. If a woman desired her husband and she has the ego of, I'm going to keep you high and dry, I'm going to manipulate you, but she's secretly attracted to him, she just likes the manipulation, but then he cuts her off, and let's say he does something record breaking, like he goes 6-7 months with nothing, no booty smack, no peck on the cheek, no flip of the nip, nothing at all, no playing, no nothing, just stone cold. How it should shatter. She'd be on their Reddit. She'd be going on these feminist forums. She'd be like freaking out. Oh, I need help. She'd go on a diet. How she would spiral. But then she would see what it feels like for the man to be neglected. See, if we want to stop brothels culture, we want to stop pimp culture, we want to stop stripper culture, you have to keep men and women happy within their marriage. And intimacy is the core connector. And so, keep that in mind when you see these women making reels about Why is your wife not sleeping with you? It's because you're not doing this, this, and that. Like I said, the tough time with small kids. But don't... How do I word this? You have to warn women about neglecting the needs for too long. Because you want to ignite her femininity, you need to help her in other ways, like diet, sleep, self-care, nice hot shower, little things. You want to help her to reignite that, not, okay, don't fix your problems, but just make more and more standards that he's got to jump through. Because you make it too hard on him, then he's going to go find someone who's easier. You see my point here? And you can snap your fingers and say, he should rise up to the challenge. He should do this. He should do that. But haram is very easy now. It's literally an app. A website. Okay? Literally drive to certain communities and it's right there. Even massage parlors with happy endings. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so you have to look at if you transgress. So transgressing, those rights. And feminists hate it when you talk about marriage rights. Feminists only like focusing on everything the man does wrong, ignoring what the woman does wrong. So highlight and exacerbate what the man does wrong, but don't talk about what the woman needs to fix. Don't do that. And so this doesn't actually help a marriage stay together. Islam has the best system, and the more you analyze this and you just pick apart Western culture, you're like, hey man, this is weird. Something isn't right here. Right? Let me know what you think, because I'm going through this thought process now more and more, and I don't, why is Instagram showing me stuff like this? I know there's some social engineering going on, and it's the first post I interacted with, and you interact with the post to show you more. But the very first post I saw I like sushi, cakes, koi fish ponds, book stuff, pasta making. That's a lot of the stuff I click on. But why is Instagram feeding me a woman complaining about how she, she's giving all these demands and that a man has to meet in order for her to sleep with him, and they're already married? And it's fascinating further thing about it. Women will sleep on the first night by the third date. They're hooking up with those men, but then when they get married, they withhold. It should be the opposite. Be chaste and clean and pure, and then have fun and unleash when you're married. It's fascinating. It's really weird at the same time. Something to that. Let me know what you think. If you'd like to support my work, you can go to www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive, and please press like, comment, and share. And until next time.